Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Indeed. Good Saturday evening to you. Appreciate you checking us out wherever you are on the BetQL Network. That is BT. I'm the Sports Machine. And let's bring on friend of the show from Cageside Press. He is Dylan Rush. Next week, Rush, we got UFC 304. Thank goodness, because let's be honest, tonight's card leaves a little bit to be desired, even though you can bet on it. And if you can bet on it, we will certainly do it and talk about it here on the show. One of the fights I'm looking forward to next week is Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett. I'm not sure where I should put my money. Where's yours going? And how much do you think we're going to find out who the real Paddy is next Saturday night?
I think next Saturday night, that fight with Bobby Green goes a long way in deciding where Paddy Pimblett stands. It's also his last fight on his UFC contract currently, so that's interesting. He's mentioned maybe going over to influencer boxing or something like that, so that's something to keep an eye on. But I think you go with Paddy in this one. I think Paddy is going to show that he has a well-rounded game. He's been constantly improving since his UFC debut. A lot of people, of course, he has a lot of haters. He's a bit not controversial, but he has his fans, he has his haters. But I think that he's a very solid striker. Of course, he's even better with the grappling and the jiu-jitsu. So I think he's going to showcase that. I think it's going to be an all-around performance, and he's going to keep that undefeated UFC record intact.
I love that that's become the new negotiating ploy because everybody has such little respect for PFL. They're like, I'll go to Misfits Boxing. Don't make me do it, Dana. Like if you ever wanted to know how the UFC, because Rush, just like how much of this, I say this as somebody who genuinely does love the sport, right? But it's so much. It's like it's every week. How many times a year do you feel like when I'm watching it, this feels like homework? Because like they're just shoving Apex cards down our throat, and they're like, strawweight kind of title eliminator. Enjoy, everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely. It hasn't been as enjoyable recently. Even last week at UFC Denver, the card kind of fell apart at the end. They kind of, they threw in Evan Elder and that guy Flowers and a couple other fights, but like it definitely wasn't a great card. This card is even worse. So I think we're all pretty excited for UFC 304. These cards do feel a bit like homework, like you said.
Guys, if I wanted to hear people complain like this, I would have stayed with my ex-girlfriend. Brendan Tobin, Dylan Rush, we the Sports Machine, Sean Levine here on the BetQL Network. Tom Aspinall has always been my guy since day one. I think he knocks out Curtis Blades. How do you think the co-main goes down?
I think he knocks out Curtis Blades as well. I'm a guy that's been so high on Curtis Blades from the very start for years now. I predicted him to defeat Jailton Almeida, which, of course, he was an underdog in that one. He stopped that hype train. But I think Aspinall is just too much for him. I think he might be the best heavyweight in the world. He definitely has some of the most powerful hands in the world. After dipping them in petrol oil all camp, we'll see if he's even more powerful after this one.
Yeah.
I think he knocks him out. I think it'll probably be early. Within 10 minutes, within the first 2 rounds, I think Aspinall puts Curtis Blades away.
You feel like there's any chance that he'll ever get a shot against John Jones, or do you feel like he'll just become eventual heavyweight champion because the old timers will fight and they'll retire and they'll just name Aspinall the undisputed champion, or do you feel like he'll ever get a chance to unify the belts?
Unfortunately, I think he will not get a chance to unify the belts. I was going to say a guarantee. Of course, there's no guarantees in the sport, but I think John Jones is pretty safe to say he's going to retire after this next fight with Stipe. I'm pretty certain that I think he'll get the win over Stipe. I think John Jones will walk off in the sunset as UFC heavyweight champion. He's done just about everything there is to do in the sport. Of course, one of the greatest, if not the greatest fighter of all time. So I think he walks off with the belt. I think Aspinall, the most exciting fight to make, I think we could all agree, I'm sure most people would agree, is Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight and maybe challenging Aspinall to solidify that heavyweight title reign for Aspinall. Pereira and Aspinall, that's the fight to make next if Aspinall defeats Blades and if John Jones retires.
Do you think there's anything that Aspinall can do, whether it be in interviews, post-fight call-out, that would get people interested enough or get John Jones interested enough to actually take that shot to fight him? Or do you feel like this is just a case of they're just on 2 different timelines, John gains nothing from it, so he has no point in putting the risk out there?
Well, I think that we've seen that the last 6 months across all of social media. It's like so many fans trying to get at John to like take the fight. Aspinall himself trying to say whatever he can, do whatever he can to get John Jones maybe a little irked and maybe like, you know what, I will fight this guy. But I really just don't see it happening. There's a lot more to gain, of course, for Aspinall than John Jones. I think John Jones, he's suffered injuries here and there over the last few years. He, of course, has had a lot of stuff going on outside of the cage for good and for bad, probably mostly the latter. But I think John Jones going to call it quits after the Stipe fight. I don't know if there's much Aspinall could do to change that.
But Russ, you feel like if, let's say John did, let's just say he wants to keep fighting. He wants to make a lot of money. Do you feel like the GOAT's still taking out both of these young guys, or do you think that they would both make him look like an old man? Because I'm still feeling like with these young up and comers, like, get off my lawn. John Jones is still going to choke them out in 2 minutes. Or he's going to keep them at a distance and be annoying and just kick at their knees. Like, he's still the smartest fighter I've ever seen, on top of maybe being the most physically gifted fighter I've ever seen. Even with all the weapons and power that these young lions have. So should there ever be that unlikely scenario that he did fight him, do you feel like John Jones would come away victorious in both of them, or is he just getting too long in the tooth?
I think you're asking the wrong guy, because you're asking a guy that picked Cyril Gane to defeat John Jones. It's probably my worst pick of all time.
How'd that
go? I was so confident, too. I was like, Cyril Gane, he's way younger. John Jones been out for a while. Moving up to heavyweight is not like moving from featherweight up to 155. That's a 60-pound gap between light heavyweight and heavyweight. So that's a pretty big deal. But I just don't know. Like, I don't think that either Jones or Aspinall would be above like a minus 200 favorite. I feel like that both of the guys, both Aspinall and Jones, or even Jones and Blades, or of course if Pereira moves up, I think that those are close fights. Those are fights the fans want to see. They could go either way. I would lean Jones in every single one, just based on like everything he's accomplished. Of course, he's just never lost a fight. He's the greatest of all time. But I will say this: if Aspinall were to defeat Jones, of course he's not the GOAT. He's still young. He hasn't done enough. But if Pereira moved up and became heavyweight champion, especially if he were to move up and defeat John Jones for the belt, I would say that Alex Poatan Pereira is the greatest UFC fighter of all time.
What the odds would be if they fought like 6 months from now? John Jones is like, screw it, I'll fight Pereira. Who do you think?
I think Alex Pereira would be a very sizable underdog. I'm not saying I would agree with that. I'm not saying that's the odds I would make, but I would assume that he would be in the plus 250 to plus 300 range if he were to fight John Jones, just because of John Jones's, of course, wrestling and grappling acumen, and just what he did to Gane, what he's done to everybody. I think the odds makers would favor Jones getting Pereira to the ground, doing what everybody has not been able to do, and actually using his wrestling effectively against Poatan.
That'd be a badass fight. I feel like we haven't even talked about the main event for the belt next week, Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. And it's like the same amount of disrespect that everybody gives these guys, where we've had you now for like 10 minutes. We've talked about John Jones for a while. We've talked about Paddy. We've talked about Aspinall. So it's like, all right, now we're here. So who do you like in the Leon Bilal fight?
Yeah, here we are talking about Alex Pereira, who has no fight booked instead of the main
right?
event.
John Jones hasn't fought in years, but who do you like in the Leon fight?
But I definitely am going with Leon Edwards in this fight. I think that he is the best welterweight in the world right now. I think the second would be Shavkat Rakhmonov, from what I can gauge. But I think, of course, Bilal is definitely more than deserving of this title shot. He's definitely in the top 5 welterweights in the world, no matter any way you slice it. I think that it's going to be similar to the last fight. I know it was only a round and a half, and it got stopped due to accidental eye poke. But regardless of that fight, I just think Leon's striking is just so many levels above Bilal's. And if Bilal isn't able to get the fight to the ground early, it's going to be a long night for him. I could see Leon drawing it out, just picking him apart, similar to the way he did Colby Covington over the course of 5 rounds. I would go with Leon Edwards late knockout or a decision, more leaning towards Leon Edwards by decision.
Do you feel like, because we already know like these guys, it's been such a weird build up, because it was kind of like, all right, fine, Bilal, you can have your title shot. You know, yeah. we tried like 9 fights to fight Leon. If Bilal does become welterweight champion, like is this a guy you feel like could reign for a little bit, and this is going to be a nightmare for the UFC, or do you feel like this is going to be, you know, a pretty short stint for him if he's able to get the win over Leon?
I think whether he wins or Leon wins, there's a guy named Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he's coming to take everybody's head off. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov, when he does get that title shot, he will win the belt. So I think that he might be next after. I think he's going to have one more fight, but I think he might be next. Well, if Bilal wins, Leon will probably get a rematch, and Leon could, of course, win that rematch. So I don't know. It's hard to answer that question. I think Bilal's great. I'm not, I'm not a Bilal hater. I know he has a lot of people out there that think he's boring, this and that. He's definitely not the most exciting fighter, but he is great. He is one of the best welterweights in the world. There's a reason he's fighting for a belt next week in the main event. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but I think Bilal has what it takes to have a pretty solid championship reign, but it all starts next Saturday night. He's got to get that one done first before we can start talking about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, too, because it's like you look at this division as a whole, you never quite know, because you would think probably on paper, like Colby versus Usman was going to be a boring fight, and it ended up being like a great rivalry back and forth. And, so who's to ever say what that's going to be? But you are right. This Shavkat Rakhmonov, I mean, he's the greatest. I mean, let's be honest about it. He goes out there. He'll have 30 seconds left. He's going to go for a chokeout. Sean disrespects it. He says he wears a rat hat. I don't appreciate that. I don't want to see this, though, dude. Like, I saw Usman.
What do you want me to do?
I don't like it. But I'm a big Kamaru Usman fan, and I saw Usman was mentioning, like, hey, maybe, he'll dip his toe in the Shavkat waters. See, this is one of those where I'm like, I don't know if I want to see Usman, because I feel like, this is not the way I want him to go out, because you got to be like the gatekeeper. Do you feel like Usman has enough championship valor that he could get it done against Shavkat if anybody in this division could? Or is that just cross of generations, like he's going down, Shavkat's going up, and Rakhmonov's going to kill him?
Well, I see Ian Gary.
Just even calling for the fight before you answer. What a dog. So he's ready to go from Hamzat to Shavkat? Goodness gracious.
It's crazy. Kamaru Usman definitely fears no man. I think that Ian Gary's been the one that's been calling him out more than anyone, saying he wants to fight Shavkat in December of this year. I think Shavkat would run through Ian Gary. I think that you're right. You're spot on. Kamaru Usman probably has the best chance to defeat Shavkat, along with Leon Edwards and maybe Hamzat Chimaev. But yeah, I mean, if I was Usman, I would definitely not be like looking for this fight specifically. I wouldn't be like ringing Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard like, give me Shavkat, give me Shavkat. But if it does happen after what he did, 8 days notice against Hamzat Chimaev, he won that last round. If it was a 5-round fight, it might have been a different result. I think Usman has what it takes. He could defeat Shavkat. I wouldn't recommend him if I was his teammate or coach. I wouldn't be like, go fight Shavkat. But if it does happen, he definitely has a puncher's chance, fighter's chance.
Yeah, like, see, it makes Usman is a dog, and like if you're at this point in his career, you do that, you take out the hype train, you're back in the title picture. Makes sense to me. Ian Gary fighting him is stupid. Ian Gary has to still like figure some things out. He's very clearly surging. I honestly think that the best place for him probably would be a matchup with JDM, because like I think both of them are still searching for stuff. Jack Della Maddalena kind of got a gift last time with Burns screwing up the way that he did at 299. So I feel like almost those two should go in the top 5 eliminated to then see who takes the jump. Because I feel Ian Gary, just to me, versus Shavkat, it's very clearly just too much too soon. I just feel like one guy just looks way more ready than the other.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think actually that was a great idea. JDM and Ian Gary sounds like a perfect fight to me. I feel like Shavkat, like, there's only one way to find out, but I really do feel like Shavkat is levels above Ian Gary at this point. I feel like Ian Gary did great, did what he had to do against MVP, and he's feeling that confidence, that swagger coming off that big victory. But there's a big difference between MVP and Shavkat Rakhmonov. I don't see Ian Gary being able to get Shavkat to the ground and control him and have his way with him on the ground the way he did with MVP. So, yeah, if I'm Ian Gary, I'm not jumping from Neil Magny to MVP than to Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think that he needs at least at the minimum one more fight in between a potential matchup with Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think JDM would be a perfect opponent. I would even favor JDM in that one, but that would be a really good fight.
Follow him at Rush MMA11. He is friend of the show, Dylan Rush, here on Tapped Out. Great stuff as always, Rush. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you guys for having me, man. I had a great time.
You got it, brother. BT, is there a fighter in the promotion right now that's more, I guess, divisive from people that know what they're talking about than Ian Gary? Like, I remember we brought on a couple of guests that have said that they think that Ian Gary is going to fight for a belt. And I look at him, I'm like, finish somebody, dude.
Yeah, I don't think it's – I would say, like, probably Paddy Plimpet's more divisive than he is right now.
Yeah,
I just think that for him, he just needs – it's one of those things. He just needs the performance. He's just caught somewhere between, I don't know, doing the McGregor impression and just being as talented as he is and figuring things out. He's 26 years old. I mean, it's a baby when you are a contender. Not many guys are champion at that age. I just think that if he's going to go in there and he gets absolutely just ragged on by Rakhmonov, that's going to be bad news for him, man. So I think like JDM, it seems like more of a stylistic matchup. It's a striking matchup. You go get the best of that, and then all of a sudden the momentum can ride a little bit, and you're taking out kind of the next young guy. I just think it's a smarter move for him. But if he's got the onions to go do it, he's got the onions to go do it. I'm not going to knock him for it. I just think it's a huge mistake.
Well, it's a fast track. If you're wrong and he was to beat Rachmanov, that fight was to actually go down, then he probably gets a title fight. So
for sure,
that would be boom right away. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. Like the difference between where people think Ian Gary is, there's a very wide range. All right, coming up on the other side, we bring producer Jake on and we play a game of Pick Your Fighter. Was that Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter at the beginning? It said Pick Your Fighter. Or is that every fighting game ever? We'll get to that on the other side. It's Tapped Out on the BetQL Network.